couple of the other main points I want to make here. I mentioned a little bit about the history of this whole thing, and briefly, in the World Peace Diet, there's a chapter that kind of illuminates this, or a couple of chapters actually, but the basic idea is that if we go back about 10,000 years ago to what is today Iraq, in the western sort of Asia, Eastern Mediterranean region, we find that for the very first time people started to own animals as property for food. That's called herding. It was wild sheep, and then it was wild goats, and about 2,000 years later wild cows, and other animals, of course, with time. But the basic idea is that when people started to do this was a revolution. It actually, my feeling is it was the last revolution in our society. It changed everything. It changed our relationship with animals, nature, each other, and even in many ways the so-called revolutions since then, like the scientific revolution or the industrial revolution, really haven't been revolutions in the sense that we can kill and eat more animals faster than ever. It didn't change the deeper structure, but the herding revolution did do that. It changed our deepest relationship, really, with animals and with each other. And I would say about 5 things happened. Number one, animals were reduced in status. Sheep and goats and cows, of course, were reduced to being mere slaves. They were, as property. And became gradually despised because we were harming them over and over again. The other animals, the free-living animals, were also reduced because they began to be seen more and more as pests. They might interfere with our property. So we want to get rid of those other animals as much as we can, especially animals like bears and wolves and bobcats and prairie dogs and any animal that might interfere with our property. And actually, that was number one. Number two was it led directly to the rising for the first time on planet Earth of a wealthy elite class. We had this rising, again, this was a slow revolution. It took hundreds of years, it took actually hundreds of generations. Gradually this wealthy elite class emerged, and it was, I used to teach college courses in the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Iliad, the Odyssey, the ancient Old Testament writings. These ancient writings, these are the first writings in many ways that we have in the West, are, by then, it's about 3,000 years ago, you can see very clearly we have the kings, right, these wealthy kings, and they're basically a wealthy class that dominates the rest of the society, politically, economically, and they're wealthy and powerful really for one reason. That is, they own livestock. Livestock, sheep and goats and cows, this is wealth. The more sheep and goats and cows you have, the wealthier you are. And so the ancient Latin word capita, does anyone know what that means, capita? Yeah, right, head. So we had the arising for the first time of economics based on capitalism, based on owning head of sheep and goats and cows, of a wealthy elite that owns the means of production of wealth, which was livestock, because you can breed these animals and make more money. And so this system gradually evolved, and we had this wealthy elite eating a lot of meat and dairy. The very first science actually was men figuring out how to dominate female animals so they would give more milk and more wool and so forth. And then that gave rise to 2 more institutions. The wealthy elite realized that they could quickly increase their wealth. And so what they invented was war. There had never been war on planet Earth. But once we started owning animals as property, and a wealthy elite arose that owned most of those animals, then they saw another guy, another king, that had a lot of sheep and goats and cows. That was money, that was wealth. So they wanted to get it, right? So this is the first get-rich-quick scheme. They would go and attack. So we're going to take those sheep and goats, but of course the other side would not give up without a fight. So the very first word for war, actually, that we know of on planet Earth is the ancient Sanskrit word gavya. It literally means the desire for more cows. It's the first word for war. Whoever lost the war, not only did the animals become the property of the victors, but the people became the property of the victors. So we had the arising for the first time of an institution that unfortunately is still with us today. We have war and we have slavery. Whoever lost became property, and so the people were owned. And I've realized in my research in the World Peace Diet, it's a sad fact that everything we've done to animals, we have eventually done to each other. It's a small step from owning a rooster or a cow or a pig to owning a human being and dominating them and using them and abusing them for profit. And so they were owned and used. And then two other things. Also, gradually, men learned to see these animals that they were owning, the female animals that they were owning, as mere breeders, right? The females were not seen as females to be respected. They were seen as, this is the way you get more wealth, because if they could impregnate those female animals quickly, and efficiently, they would have more babies and they would have more wealth. And so this led directly to men looking at not only at female animals as breeders, but as women as breeders. Basically, just women are here for men to use sexually for pleasure, for sons, and so forth. And this whole fascination with bloodlines, of course, emerges. And then the other thing is the role model for young boys to emulate gradually becomes more and more the role model of the hard, tough, disconnected male, a hard, violent, tough man, disconnected from natural feelings of kindness and mercy and tenderness, a male who is capable of violence against animals, against rival herders, against women. And so we had the arising in the Western Mediterranean of a very violent, warlike society based on eating meat and dairy products, and that this culture spread. It took over and dominated other cultures, spread into the northern Mediterranean, into Asia, Central Asia, into Europe. It's, of course, spread into the Americas and Africa. It's been spreading, unfortunately in a sense, and it's been spreading, and we're born into it today. I mean, it's spreading today in many ways through Monsanto and Cargill and Kentucky Fried Chicken and Burger King and all these, IMF, the World Bank. I mean, this whole, I call it the military, industrial, meat, medical, pharmaceutical, media, banking complex, right? We have this complex. And the basic idea is just to realize that for us as people, for whatever reason people thought they had to do that back then, to kill animals and eat them and go to war and fight and all that. Today, why are we doing that? It's not in our best interest to be eating animal foods, causing them terrible suffering, going to war, dominating, having a wealthy class that makes money off of war. So the idea is, if we want to get to the root of the problem of violence, war, injustice, and devastation to ecosystems, we've got to get to the root of that, which is food. Food is our most intimate connection with our society, with nature, with everything. And we're eating it, right? I mean, this physical body you see here, this is it. This is right. What you're seeing right now, waving at you, is tofu and tomatoes or whatever. so this is we are. And that's something I think that we all feel in our bones too. Is this idea that our physical body is a gift. It's our vehicle, right, for expressing ourselves for the short amount of time we're on this earth. Right? We're only here for a little while. It's important, I think, remember that. Our life doesn't go on forever. It's precious because it's transient, like a flower. Flowers are beautiful because they're temporary. Our lives are beautiful because they're temporary. And that beauty, and they're very temporary. I mean, maybe, if we live well, we get 7 or 8 decades. Eat a lot of sprouts, maybe you get 10 decades, right? But it's not that long. It goes by very quickly. They interviewed the oldest person in the world. I think she's 118 years old recently, and they said, "What's it like to be 118 years old?" And she said, "It sure went by awful fast." So it's a short life. So the basic idea is that our life, in many ways, our body is a temple, right? It's a vehicle that we can use to create and to experience our life here. And so you would think, if we're building a temple that we really value, for example, if I'm building a temple, I want to use bricks that are of the highest quality, right? Bricks. So if we're building a body temple, we would want to use bricks that are wholesome and of love and joy and creativity and beauty. And yet, if we're eating meat and dairy products and eggs, I mean, the bricks we're building our body, what are they made of? Violence and misery and disease and despair and sadness and grief and horror, suffering and torture. I mean, do we want to build this body, this precious and our children who are just depending on us with those kinds of bricks? What are we thinking? Why are we doing that? Again, it's not to blame anyone. It's just to understand that this cultural momentum from 10,000 years ago is coming down through the generations to our grandparents and parents and to us. And it's up to us. We don't have to blame them. We just have to understand, okay, that's what happened, but now we have to stop it. I mean, we can create the option of other ways of living. And we were just, a few minutes ago, Madeline and I were eating a wonderful supper in a vegetarian restaurant. And I see here in Singapore, there's lots of vegetarian restaurants and vegan restaurants. And there's opportunities to learn that we can get all the nutrients that we need to be healthy. So when we understand the history of this, I think we can begin to realize that today, when we see the situation we're in, it's not a good idea to continue traditions that are devastating. So those are some of the main ideas in the underlying of this. And then I just want to say a couple more things that I think are very important to understand in terms of the outer world and the inner world. So the outer world, when I think of the outer world, basically I'm talking about our environment, the earth, our society, and our physical health. So when we look at animal agriculture, we can see that it's the most devastating thing we're doing to the outer world. In terms of our earth, there's a whole chapter on this in the World Peace Center. I could talk a long time. How many of you have seen Cowspiracy? I didn't see the raise of yeah, some of you have. I highly recommend it. Actually, Cowspiracy was created by Kip Anderson, who's a student of ours. He went through our World Peace Diet training and went on to make a film to show some of the ideas in the World Peace Diet. It's called Cowspiracy. If you have a chance to see it, I highly recommend it because it really helps to illuminate the environmental devastation of animal agriculture. Right now, for example, we're growing enough food, as I said, to feed everyone, but it's taking an enormous toll on the environment to grow so much grain and feed it to animals. We're having really serious problems with soil erosion, with water pollution, with the ocean devastation. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but oceanographers are saying right now that the overfishing of the oceans has gotten to the point now where if it continues the way it's going, we only have about another 25 years. Most of the major fisheries have collapsed because the demand for fish is so huge because we're not just feeding fish to people. We eat a lot of fish directly, but scientists have discovered that it's called enriching. If you enrich the feed of cows and sheep and pigs and chickens with fish meal, then it's profitable. They give more milk. So when you're drinking milk, you're actually drinking fish, right? Because they're feeding these cows fish meal to make them give more milk. And have you seen cows trying to catch fish, anybody? Are cows intended to catch fish? Are they eating fish? It's not something they're designed for, right? Just like we're not designed to be eating milk or these other meat and all this stuff. It's only because they're only doing it because it's the interest of their exploiters that they do that. And it's really the same for us. If we're eating these foods, we're being exploited. We're going to be unhealthy. We're going to spend a lot of money at the hospital. And so the idea is to understand that we're just devastating the oceans for fish, for cows, so they can give more milk. And all those toxins, the heavy metals, the PCBs, the dioxins, the nuclear radiation, all that stuff concentrates in fish. It concentrates even more in eggs and dairy products. And then we eat that stuff. And cancer rates go up. And that's profitable. So we have to understand also that the rainforests are being cut down. The rainforest, it was an acre, so that's about half a hectare every second, up until recently when Brazil loosened the regulations. Right now it's gone up even faster. And again, the driving force behind the cutting down of the rainforest in the Amazon is people taking out their wallets, like I said, and voting for meat, dairy products, and eggs, because when we do that, we're getting these products, meat, dairy products, and eggs, that a lot of it does come actually from the Amazon, either directly or indirectly, because these forests are being cut down to grow soybeans, and the soybeans are used to feed these animals, and these soybeans are shipped everywhere, to China, over here, to Europe, everywhere, as feed for cows and pigs and chickens, and factory farmed fish. 2/3 of the fish, between half and 2/3 of the fish we're eating now is factory farmed. Factory farm fishing is devastating to ecosystems and to the poor fish who are they can hardly move. I've seen these places. I mean, they're so toxic and so miserable for these fish. But since the fish are gone, then no fish aren't left in the ocean. Now we're factory farming the fish, and they have to eat a lot of soy or eat other fish. It's a very wasteful system. It concentrates toxins all the way up, and yet we don't hear about it. We're not really told about it. We have to get together in in places like this to find out what's really going on. So this is the basic idea: is that animal agriculture is devastating to our ecosystems. The research that's done, there's different figures, but generally a conservative estimate is 12 to 1. In other words, if you have a given area of land, you can feed 12 people eating a plant-based diet, or one person eating a meat and dairy-based diet. Right? So this is huge. And on one hand, it's terrible in the sense that animal agriculture is so devastating, but on the other hand, It's liberating because we can see it's not just 2 to 1 or 3 to 1, we're talking about 12 to 1. In other words, as we human beings wake up from this cultural trance of eating animal foods and move to a plant-based diet that we're designed for and stop supporting animal agriculture, then we can liberate our oceans. We can liberate the forests. We can, right now we're in the largest mass extinction of species in 65 million years. We're killing, we're sort of sending into extinction thousands of species every day, according to some scientists. So this is because of the destruction of rainforest and ocean habitat, which is driven by animal agriculture. So the idea is that as we wake up, we can allow the earth to heal. How many of you have noticed that the earth is beautiful? Anybody? I hope, yeah. This earth is so beautiful. And so you would think, and I know it does, it would inspire us to do what we can to protect the earth, to protect birds, to protect fishes, to protect forests, to protect ecosystems and lakes and streams and everything that we, because our life depends on healthy ecosystems. So if we care at all about the earth, we want to reduce our environmental footprint, there's no greater gift we can give to our earth, to animals, to future generations than to